Ah, yes. The Big Ten and the SEC bickering about the college football playoff. What would the offseason be without the Big Ten and the SEC complaining to one another? Let's talk about it here on the Portal Podcast.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
To the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day right here on the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, Locked On. We are brought to you by our friends at Mazda. We put in the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. Stay tuned later on in the show for this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda, because there is more to you. We're going to be discussing one primary topic, but it has a lot of subpoints. The college football playoff expansion. You knew it was coming, but there's the TV aspect of it. There's in-season scheduling. Maybe if there is expansion and more teams could actually lose a game or two, they would be more likely to, let's say, schedule out-of-conference games that matter, the ones that, guys like myself and many of you really liked. We'll talk about that a little later on in the show. What about the 12-game playoff right now? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? That'll be the middle portion of today's episode. And the beginning, again, the Big Ten and the SEC are bickering, and it is the Big Ten proposing 23 at-large bids and then the one G6. That's their idea. The SEC, Greg Sankey and company, they would prefer 16. I have some comments about it. I have some thoughts about it. And to start the show, before we go any further, expansion's coming in some way, shape, or form, and know that money is always the answer. I'm not going to try to convince anybody of anything other than that. And if you don't believe that, you're crazy. But I'm curious why Sankey doesn't want 24 instead of 16, because I would assume there would be more money with it. I don't know. But here is the one caveat. The Big Ten's idea is to eliminate the conference championship games. If you take nothing else from this, that could be the stickler, because TV, they like it, but their thought is first round playoff games would get rid of the weekend with the conference championships. And then the playoff games would start that weekend. You would have more home playoff games. So fans going to a school to see a game the first week in December. Yeah, I think that would do very well too. Maybe even better. It would be cool, especially in places that were, that one-off year where they have a great year. A BYU gets a home game or something like that. That would be dope. That's cool. I'm not sure exactly on all the numbers and the thoughts that the SEC and Greg Sankey want. Tony Petitti in the Big Ten, if they get their 24, I do like that. Having 8 teams would sit out. Then you'd have 16 teams play first round. So 8 teams are going to bye. There's different ways you can look at it, but I thought that was kind of a neat idea. Now, the question becomes who wins and why? And if they stalemate, it stays at 12. I'm not sure anybody has a definitive answer for that, but here are a few questions that I have, and then I'll get into the chat. Number 1, do you prefer automatic league bids? Now, we both know that regardless of number, whether it's 12, 16, 24, God forbid, even more than that, the Big Ten and the SEC are going to argue about how many automatic bids their leagues get. What do you think? This is open-ended. I don't have a specific opinion on this, but this is a major sticking point for the college football playoff, and it has been, and it's probably never going to change. Number 2, first round home games and no conference title games. What are your thoughts? I just mentioned it a moment ago. Do you like this? Do you think that's something that will work long-term? Why or why not? Number 3, are you cool with it if at 16 teams, and especially at 24, if there are 3 and 4 loss teams that make it into the college football playoff? Again, why or why not? Number 4, expansion to 24 allows teams to schedule tougher out-of-conference games. This is the one I'm all in on. Look, I grew up on out-of-conference games early in the season. Clemson against Georgia, Notre Dame against Michigan, Arkansas playing somebody out of conference that was different, like Tennessee would play Arkansas, something like that. There were little games in different ways that they ended up being in the same league later on, like Arkansas, Tennessee. There are all kinds of different ways you could look at this, and it's fun. But like Florida State, Miami would play Florida at one point. There were all kinds of different games like that. Now, it's not as like, look at Notre Dame USC is no longer. This is the one advantage going into a season. I think that teams are going to look at it, hey, maybe at least once in a while, maybe Notre Dame and USC play 4 times in 10 years, something. But I digress. Number 5, how much is the regular season further diminished if you do go to 16, or again, if you go to 24, and that's what Tony Petitti and the Big 10 want? Is it really diminished a lot? Is it not? I have 2 thoughts on this, and I'm not sure which direction I'm leaning to more, but let's start with 16. That's the lower number. We'll build to 24. At 16, there's at least more of a chance that some of those out-of-conference games will still be played. So I get that. But at some point, 16, I don't know if that's the number or if it's 24 or more. Teams just aren't going to have enough depth. You're going to see the bigger the number for the number of games you have to win in the playoff, the more likely it is to never have more than just a handful of teams that really win it because they recruit better. Now, Indiana, I know, is the outlier of all outliers this past year, but something to think about there. If you go to 24 teams, I think that you would almost have to set a rule on what you do in terms of your out-of-conference scheduling. That way you could, like some teams still might try to just play nobody. Like Indiana doesn't play anybody out of conference. It's a joke. And it's designed that way, like just complete joke. That's my alma mater, by the way. So I'm not just taking a shot at Indiana. I root for them, but like, look, it's pathetic. You have to hold teams accountable if you're going to go to 24, because some teams will do it and some won't. You have to make teams, you have to count that against, like that's a loss. Like hard line, open-ended, the committee says if you play 3 like FCS or just bottom feeders, that's a loss, even if you win all 3 games. That's how I see it, because otherwise the regular season just becomes a joke. But those are my thoughts on that, and you can certainly talk about it however you want. Just for the sake of argument, this next season, for those of you that are watching live, you can see this on the screen, but if you're listening to this later, these are the odds in late January. This is before Trinidad Chambliss got anointed the opportunity to play for Ole Miss, but these are the odds that FanDuel had for the teams to win the title this next year. They're the basic same teams you would expect. Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas, Indiana, Oregon, and Georgia in that order. Notre Dame's 650, Ohio State 700, same with Texas, same with Indiana, 850 for Oregon, and 1,000 for Georgia. So the top end really doesn't matter what the number is, in my opinion. It'll be this way in 4 or 5 years too. And for the record, what I've read and what I've heard, the Big Ten's proposal, the earliest the 24 would work is 2029. I do not know, and if anybody's in the chat or wants to comment on this later on, if you watch or listen to this later, is this something they're willing to go like 16 for a year or so, then go to 24? I haven't heard about that, but I assume they just want to jump to 24. I don't know. But what are your thoughts on it in general? And do you like the idea of expansion? Why or why not? When we come back, I'll jump into the chat, and then we'll talk about what's happened with the first 2 years of the college football playoff with just the 12 teams. Did you enjoy it? Did you like some of the things that happened with it, the drama? Because obviously it's a reduced number. We'll get into that next, right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Mazda, moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what is on the screen. This isn't going to be about a player. This is going to be about a scenario. The playoff has been fun for me, and there are numerous people that have made the playoff work. Obviously, the committee is always going to be under scrutiny, but I will give credit to the people that put in the effort for the home games, setting that up. Let's talk about the people behind the scenes that have made those playoff home games really fun. I think that's the best part of the playoffs, but not all these people get their names in lights. They're not just the announcers. It's the TV crews. It's the people that set up the towns, the campuses. A lot of times, these schools, the students are getting ready to go on break. They're getting ready for their final exam. There's a lot of things they have to do to make it work. Give a shout out to the people, the administrations, the cities, for all the individuals that make those home playoff games a blast for us to watch on TV if we can't go. I think that really needs to be talked about. This kind of situation reminds us of what it takes to raise the bar. It's all the extra work off the field, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and I never quit. We put in the same passion into every model, highlights that make the real. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there is more to you. We are also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel has a great opportunity for you right now because if you've ever wanted to go to the NBA Finals, here's your chance. In person, and you could get your flights, your tickets, and everything. FanDuel is giving you that chance to turn that dream into reality with the NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on the NBA future of your choice, whatever team it may be, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win the NBA Finals, trip for two. That's right. Again, flights, tickets, the whole shebang. So I don't care which team it is. If you think it's going to be Boston, if you think it's going to be LA, if you think it's going to be some surprise team, if you think it's going to be the favorite, it doesn't matter. Just use your profit boost, and there you go. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Take your game to the next level with the Everydayer Club. Down below in the description, there is a link. It will define more details, but here's the number one thing that you need to know. For those of you that want to use your audio to listen to this podcast or really anything else across the network, this is how it works. $5 a month or $50 a year, no ads. Doesn't matter if it's Spotify, Podbean, Apple, Amazon Music, whatever choice you use. I'm a Spotify guy, but again, it doesn't matter. I take my pods on the go. Get your pods here on the Locked On the Portal podcast. No ads. That's your best deal going. Check out the description below. Now let's talk about the 12-game playoff. I'm going to comment as I go through some of these comments. I see Salty's in here giving his thoughts, several other people as well. But Salty, you've got more comments in here than I could possibly get to. What's going on, brother? Let's see here. Salty says, will there be a general bias towards playoff expansion because more schools' head coaches and ADs will be able to label their seasons as made the playoffs successful? That's absolutely true. This is something I've seen discussed on other podcasts. I was actually listening to a podcast earlier. Cover 3 podcast is one of my favorites, and they were talking about that. ADs want it because if you make the playoff, the perception, at least among media, is that people in these offices are like, hey, we made the playoffs. Soon, though, like that's a short window. Soon it'll be either you make the Final Four or you're no good. And again, this is mathematical. Boosters want to go to their office and say, our team beat yours. It is a checkbox, and that's a small number. So to that end, on Salty's point here, let me bring up a list for you. And you can take this any way that you want. But I wrote down, I want to say 25 or so teams. I don't know what it is, give or take, but I'll just share my screen here and we can look at it. But these are the teams from the Big 10, the SEC, the ACC, and Big 12. I've categorized them in 2 sections. The ones that are really expected to make the playoff, at least short term, and then the ones that fans expect it to happen very soon. Notice the volume here. There just aren't enough spots. Even if you go to 24, there's always that team that surprises that makes the playoff. You have the one team that's G6. It is not easy to make it. So again, here is my list, and take it for what it's worth. If somebody on this was obvious that I missed, my apologies, but this is what I've got. SEC, Bama, Georgia, LSU, and Texas. Those fan bases will lose it. Absolutely, unequivocally, will lose it if they do not make the playoff. Number 2 on this, that's still not even close to all of them. There's still others that are kind of feel that way to a certain degree now. A&M, Ole Miss this year because they got Trinidad Chambliss back. Oklahoma fans, they made the playoff, but they need to do something now. Florida's got a new head coach. They're going to have high expectations, probably year 2. This year, I think it's kind of the honeymoon, but not for long. Tennessee, I actually have a show getting ready to come up about this. Eric Kane from Locked On Vols, and I talked about it. He thinks that the fan base will not be happy, even if Aguilar is not the quarterback and they have to go with somebody young. They just spent so much money, the tickets and all that stuff. It's going to be difficult. Auburn's got a new coach. Vandy was just on the cusp of the playoff. Mizzou's been on the cusp of the playoff a couple times. That's just the SEC. Now, let's flip to the Big Ten. Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, Southern Cal, Washington. Those fan bases have either A, been in the playoffs and kind of that expectation. I mean, Indiana doesn't want it. USC's been knocking on the door. They can't get over the hump. Their fan base is getting pretty loud. Washington, they were in the playoff and got to the championship game recently. So they're in that conversation. Then you have some teams that, if everything kind of goes right, they could make the playoff. Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan State, UCLA, Nebraska. Those are some of them. Big 12, I think, is a very short list. Right now, Texas Tech, Arizona State, and BYU. Those are the three teams that either been to the playoff or right on the cusp and have good teams right now. Utah's got a new head coach, but there's somebody that could at least compete for it. Houston, they ended up winning 10 games this last year. Let's see what they do. K-State might be kind of going down a little bit. We'll see. They lost a lot of good players, but they've been a consistent program. Same thing with Iowa State, honestly. Arizona's on the uprise, so maybe that's the dark horse team. ACC right now is just horrible at the top. Many of the top teams, perception-wise, are down, like Florida State and Clemson, but Miami and SMU are the two best teams in that league. You know, Pittsburgh, somebody I didn't put on there. They could be a team that maybe makes a run. They got Heinzel. He's a pretty good quarterback. He's only going to be a sophomore. Louisville, Clemson, FSU, Virginia Tech. Believe it or not, Cal, they've got JKS, a quarterback. Georgia Tech. Any of those teams might, in the next 5 years, make a run. It's possible. But overall, again, there's more teams that think, from a fan base perspective, that put pressure on these ADs that think, hey, we should be in the playoff. We should absolutely be in the playoff when it's not reality. Just wanted to point that out. Let's see what we got here. Salty. Should a single media here we go. Should ESPN basically currently own all the college football playoffs games, or should there be a mix of them as the NFL? I say yes. I think that would be a lot better for the sport, but I digress. Salty. If the Big Ten and SEC agree on a format, do the other conference commissioners have any way to oppose it? Somebody else is going to have to answer this one, but I really don't know what they can do. I don't know if this has to be unanimous or not. That's a great question. I really don't know that. Good question there, Salty. Is there any merit to a player's argument that JUCO years should not count towards D1 eligibility? That's being pushed. I get it both ways, but that's going to be argued for forever. Salty, when the evaluation for high school recruits, do these who consistently sport Oakleys get a ratings bump? No. My Oakley collection does not help your ratings bump, but I will comment that I like Oakleys quite a bit. No, 12 is too many. 8 is the largest number for a legitimate college football playoff. That says Katie. So she's definitely against 16, and she is definitely against 24. Virginia salted peanuts. The best things about the 2014 playoff are 2 rounds of on-campus games and no more conference championship. I would be okay with that. Again, my one caveat, and I don't know how you do this because so many of these schedules are out for years and years. If you do not play, this gets very subjective, legitimate competition in your preseason, I think it should automatically count as a loss against you. That is not going to go well with ADs. Here's what I mean by that. If you play an FCS team and you play traditional bottom feeders on your schedule as you're out of conference, let's say you're in the SEC, and there's nobody legitimate, that's a loss. Same thing Big Ten, same thing ACC, same thing Big 12. It doesn't matter because some teams are still going to try to circumvent just winning. That's my concern. Salty, hate auto bids. If you're good enough, you'll be in the playoffs. I get it. Katie, conference games need to matter. Conference titles need to matter. I don't have a problem with that, but at the same time, the Duke thing is goofy. Duke had no business being in the playoff or even in the conference championship game. They got to figure out better ways for tiebreakers. I don't have a problem with Katie saying, but they got to fix that in general. Salty, who says teams will play tougher out of conference games? They could be the difference between 3 and 4 losses for the 24 playoff. Well, that's what I mean. You have to hold them accountable. It has to be a hard line number, a hard line rule on your out of conference. Again, go look at Indiana's schedules moving forward. Their out of conference is a complete joke. I'm an Indiana grad, and I'm saying it's a complete joke. And they're one of many. You have to play somebody out of conference or it must count as a loss. Salty, is Indiana still playing a schedule set up when they were awful? Yes. For those who don't know, a lot of schedules are set years and years in advance. And here's an example. A few years back, Notre Dame and Michigan set some more games for the future. I think 2033, 2034. They set it up in like 21 or 22. Like they were over 10 years in advance. And some of these games that are lower level are also set up like that in advance. Some, not as many as like Notre Dame, Michigan. Those are long-standing rivals. But you get the point. And if you have that, you want to keep those because they're home games, so it's revenue. And B, you're probably not going to lose. You have to force teams into awkward situations or they're never going to be accountable. Katie, think about this. Is the entire history of the NFL playoffs a wild card team has only made it to the Super Bowl one time? That's exactly what you get with an expanded college football playoff. I mean, I think the Raiders won it in the 80s as a playoff team. Are you sure it's only one time that a playoff team, a wild card's made it? I think there's more than that, but even if it's only a few, it's about money and fewer people would complain that their team at least got in short term, but there's always still going to be that line. Somebody gets left out. So I still say, like I put up those odds earlier, it's still the same teams that are going to be most likely competing. Indiana's the outlier. Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas. You're probably going to see one of the Florida schools always up, and they'll be in the contention for it. You're probably going to see USC or Oregon, Penn State or Michigan. Like there's about 10, 12 teams that are just different than everybody else. LSU, maybe Tennessee has a quarterback. They got Faison Brandon coming in. By the way, watch out for him in about a year or so. Great quarterback prospect for the Vols. They're the same teams. The teams that are stacked between 15 and 24, if it goes to that number, the chances of any of them winning it in those given years is like 1% at best collectively. There's a reason they will be ranked that level. Just saying. To that end, somebody's got to be the one that gets beat up and becomes the cannon fodder. Troy, 8302. I hope they keep fighting about this and keep it to 12 for a few more years and see how it goes. 16 or 24 is way too much for my liking. You might be right. If they can't agree, to my understanding, they both have to agree. And right now they do not. Talking about the Big Ten and the SEC, that's the way it'll go. When we come back, we're going to get back into the chat. We're going to discuss some more of this. It's pretty fun. The college football playoff is wild because they're always wanting to tinker with it. I find it fascinating. I hope you do too. Let's talk about it more right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Indeed, where hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right candidate with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move, because instead of hoping the right person just comes across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, skills, certification, location, and even experience. Maybe it's a combination, whatever you like. And look at it this way. If you're hiring, do you really want to be just using your day to go through resumes, interview people? Let somebody that's an expert go through that and figure it out. Indeed is that entity to do it for you, so you save time and money. And here's the other thing. In roughly the minute I'm going to be speaking right now, 27 hires nationally and around the world combined are going to be getting jobs through Indeed. Listeners of this pod will also get a $75 job credit to help the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That is Indeed.com/podcast. Hiring. Do it the right way with Indeed. Let's jump back into the chat and have some more fun with this. This is great discussion, in my opinion, by the way. I don't think there's any way around it. I think this is something that's going to come back up over and over. And there's so many different angles. If you have a comment or question, something that you think should happen, or a parameter, if you go to a level, something you have to do from your scheduling, whatever, fire away in the chat. Katie, I never thought I'd see the day when the NFL is a more pure product than college football. I'll say this about the NFL. They have their model. You win this many games, conferences, your actual small little, AFC East, AFC North, all that stuff. There is a platform for it. But the key there is they got a salary cap. College football doesn't have one. So depending on how you want to look at it, college football they're never going to have a true salary cap, even though Congress, et cetera, trying to get involved. Boosters are always going to backdoor money to people. But it's awkward. There's no doubt about it. It's awkward because right now college football is in so much flux. The NFL probably is a more pure product. Salty. Notre Dame fans don't much like missing the playoff either. That's true too. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, should Notre Dame have been in over some of the teams that got in? Tulane, James Madison, yeah, they were better. But what about Vandy? What about Texas? Those teams were better too, and so were some others. It isn't a perfect system by any means. True Seminole, K3N. Dumb take, Miami undefeated against SEC, only losses, ACC teams, SEC overrated, confirmed. I don't know what that means. I don't know what your English is there, but I'll go ahead with that, buddy. True Seminole agreed on the stupid tiebreakers in the ACC, but the ACC is closer to the SEC than most believe. No, it is not. It has Miami at the top. There is nobody else in the stratosphere with Miami. Look, Florida State is not very good. They've won a total of 7 games and haven't won a road game in 2 years. I know. I run Locked On Seminoles. And then at the same time, Clemson, I have no idea what's going on there. SMU's on the rise. Virginia Tech, maybe we'll see. But there are 7 or 8 teams that are as good or better as programs than what the ACC has at number 2 in SMU. I can listen for you if you like. And I'm not an SEC guy. Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, LSU, all of those are just the starting points. Tennessee was in the playoff. They're pretty good. South Carolina's a team that even flirted with the playoff. Florida's not going to be down for very long. Obviously, Georgia is Georgia. That's the standard in the SEC right now. Oh, that Alabama team. Auburn's somebody that can make a run. And Missouri's been close. What about Vandy? All those teams are right there or better than SMU in some way, shape, or form over the last few years. Now, SMU, I think, is headed in the right direction, but where else is the thought process on the ACC? Again, I run Locked On Seminoles and I'm saying this. The ACC is terrible right now. I'm not sure where you get this idea at, but fair enough. Salty, Green Bay made it and won as a wild card too. That's, what was that, 2010? I want to say the Raiders won it in the early 80s when they beat the Redskins in the Super Bowl. They killed them like 38-9 or something. There's been a few, but the wild cards, there are very few that are any good to really go the whole distance. That's hard. Playing road games the whole way through and stuff. Yeah, that's a tough road to hoe. My final thought here is I want to talk about, I'll keep going through the chat while I do this. Remember, somebody brought it, I don't know if it's Katie, if it was Salty or whatever. They're probably, if you go to 24, there's a chance there's going to be a breakup of ESPN. That'd be one thing I like. You need to have multiple networks. Let NBC have a game. Let obviously CBS. ABC is a part of ESPN. Fox gets a game, whatever. Those 4 entities all need to have something to do with it. And then you talk about the fans. If it goes to 16 or if it goes to 24, again, this is the one thing that is awesome. There is nothing like home games in big games, whether it's out of conference, in conference, or the playoff, on campus with students there. Massive. To that end, I think it will be very fun. It will be very entertaining. We already had great playoff home games in terms of the atmospheres, year 1 and year 2. Maybe we'll get more competitive. Some of the games haven't been great, to be honest. The Penn State game against Boise, and there's been some others that are like, The Oregon game, James Madison, like some of these aren't that great. But at the same time, it is one advantage. Katie, I 100% get it why Miami doesn't want the ACC title to matter. So far, they can't even buy one. Oof, that's true. It's amazing. For those that don't know, Miami has never won the ACC championship game. Never. It's amazing. How is that possible? It's one of the biggest, unbelievable stories that I've ever seen in college football. Miami joined in 2004? Something like that, 2005. So it's over 20 years. And they've had the most talented roster in the league more than 5 times, I'm quite sure. So we'll be surprised again this year if they don't win it, but they should have won the league this past year. They didn't, but then they made it to the final game of the playoffs. So that's Miami football. To that end, thank you very much for everybody that showed up today. Truly appreciate it. We're going to be doing more of these. I'm getting ready to start a run for those of you that are listening of short. Tell me what you think of this when I start posting these, like 3 to 5 minutes minimum, maybe 10 to 12, depending on the circumstance, but just quarterback capsules, the quarterback room at Florida State, at LSU, at Michigan, at Utah. Just go through the Division I programs. They'll be shorter. They'll be available on YouTube and your Apple and your Spotify. But again, I usually do 15 minutes to 35 minutes is kind of the norm, and occasionally have live shows that are longer. I'm going to do some shorter ones, going to focus just on the quarterbacks, and I'll have a few questions at the back end that might bring up like a scheduling thing, like LSU plays at Ole Miss. I'll talk about Trinidad Chambliss, what I like about him, and then just mention that. Do you like some of these shorter podcast ideas? Give me a reason for yes or for no. I'd love to hear it. And if you have any other ideas, comment on this podcast or any of my others here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcasting network in the land. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you very much. We will see you again soon.